picture this, right? You walk into your local gym on a Monday evening. The music is just blaring. The fluorescent lights are buzzing. And, well, everywhere you look, there is someone with a tripod.
Oh, yeah. You can't escape the tripods these days.
Right. And they're filming a workout that looks, I mean, way more like a circus act than actual fitness.
Absolutely.
You've got people doing upside-down cable crunches or influencers pushing these wildly complex 15-step workout routines. And then you've got the guys wrapped in heavy sweatsuits doing cardio on an empty stomach.
Because they swear it's some sort of, like, biological hack to melt fat.
Exactly. It is loud, it's overwhelming, and honestly, it is exhausting before you have even picked up a single weight.
I mean, it is the absolute definition of information overload. We've taken something inherently biological, something our bodies have literally been doing for hundreds of thousands of years, and turned it into this circus of overcomplicated fads.
Yeah, it's wild.
We're basically fighting against our own physiology just to sell another PDF workout plan, you know?
Which brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We've got a fantastic stack of source material today from the Fitness Knowledge Base, specifically Module 5, Evidence-Based Training.
It's a really solid module.
It is.
Yeah.
But rather than just reading down a list of, dense scientific principles regarding strength mechanics and cardiovascular realities, we are going to grab a metaphorical machete today.
I'd love that.
We're hacking our way through the thick jungle of bro science, ditching the intimidating academic jargon, and uncovering the actual mechanisms of how your body works.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start at the absolute beginning of almost everyone's fitness journey, which is the workout plan itself.
Right, the foundation.
Yeah, because you see it constantly. People will pay hundreds of dollars for a very specific list of exercises, thinking that if they do them in this exact magical sequence, they're going to unlock massive muscle growth.
They treat it like an ancient spell or something. Exactly. Like 3 sets of this plus 4 sets of that equals instant biceps. But buying a fancy list of exercises feels, to me, a lot like buying a shiny, beautiful car chassis without an engine.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Because it looks incredibly cool sitting in your driveway, but it is just not going to take you anywhere without the actual driving force underneath the hood.
Exactly. So if the routine is the chassis, the engine, the actual physiological driving force that makes muscle tissue grow is mechanical tension.
Mechanical tension.
Yeah. And what is fascinating here is that this isn't some new discovery hot off the presses of a sports science journal.
Right. This isn't a new fad.
No, not at all. This goes all the way back to the scientific literature from at least 1975, specifically Alfred Goldberg's landmark studies. We have known for half a century that skeletal muscle tissue does not care about the name of the exercise you are doing.
So it doesn't know I'm doing the super optimal bicep blaster.
Not at all. It doesn't know if you're holding a dumbbell, a barbell, or literally a rock. It only responds to the physical stress and the stretching force placed on the muscle fibers when they have to resist a heavy load.
So the muscle is just completely blind to whatever optimal routine the influencer is selling.
Totally blind.
It just knows it's being stretched and forced to contract against resistance. So if I'm understanding the underlying mechanics here, the actual biological trigger for growth happens when we apply what the literature calls progressive mechanical overload.
Yes, progressive mechanical overload.
Which admittedly sounds a bit like an industrial engineering term for a failing elevator.
It really does sound incredibly industrial, but it is actually a really elegant survival mechanism.
How so?
Well, progressive mechanical overload simply means that over time, you have to force your muscles to handle slightly more tension than they did during the last session. You add a fractional amount of weight, or, you push for one more repetition. When you apply this overload, you literally force the body into adaptation. At the microscopic level, your muscle fibers are made up of these tiny, repeating structural units called sarcomeres.
Okay, sarcomeres. Let's make sure we ground this in a visual so we don't lose anyone in the academic weeds here.
Good idea.
I usually visualize a sarcomere acting a bit like a suspension bridge.
I like that.
So if a truck drives over that bridge that is like substantially heavier than what the bridge was originally designed for, the bridge doesn't just instantly collapse.
Right.
But the main structural cables sustain some serious micro damage. They get stressed and frayed at a very microscopic level.
That bridge analogy holds up perfectly when you look at the inflammatory response of the muscle.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When those sarcomere cables, so to speak, sustain that micro damage from the heavy truck, the heavy weight, your body's immune system, triggers a localized inflammatory response. It sends satellite cells to the area.
Like little repair crews.
Exactly. And the city engineers aren't just going to patch up that bridge exactly the way it was before.
because they know the heavy truck is going to come back.
Bingo. They recognize that heavier trucks are crossing the river now, so they need to lay down thicker, more resilient cables.
Right, because the body's primary goal is to prevent that same level of structural stress from happening again. It just wants to survive the next workout.
Exactly. That reinforcement process is what scientists call sarcomere remodeling and muscle protein synthesis.
Got it.
Your body senses the mechanical tension, it experiences the microtrauma, and then synthesizes new contractile proteins to remodel the tissue. It makes the fibers physically thicker so that the next time you encounter that specific weight, it isn't perceived as a threat.
And that's the real engine.
That is the true engine of muscle growth. It's not a secret combination of movements confusing the muscle, but rather forcing an inevitable biological adaptation through progressive tension.
Which really highlights the huge flaw in the whole muscle confusion trend.
Oh, don't even get me started on muscle confusion.
People think they need to constantly shock their muscles with entirely new routines every single week, right? But if you are constantly changing the chassis, you are never actually giving the engine time to build up horsepower.
That is spot on.
You can't apply progressive overload if you're constantly changing the variables. You never give the city engineers a chance to reinforce the bridge for one specific type of truck before you completely change the traffic pattern.
You just end up spinning your wheels. I mean, you might get sore because the movement is novel, but soreness is not an indicator of muscle growth.
Tension is.
Tension is, exactly.
Okay, well, if mechanical tension is the absolute physical requirement for growth, I have to push back a little on the psychological side of things.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you walk into that gym we were talking about earlier, you will inevitably see someone doing bicep curls with their eyes closed, grimacing, looking like they are trying to communicate with their muscles telepathically.
Oh, yeah. The classic mind-muscle connection.
Yes, the entire industry preaches this. They insist that you have to internally feel the squeeze or the exercise is completely useless. And I've always wondered, like, do I really need to meditate with a dumbbell to get bigger arms? Or is the weight itself just doing the work regardless of what I'm thinking about?
Well, the traditional fitness industry has drastically overemphasized the mind-muscle connection. They've turned it into this almost mystical prerequisite for muscle hypertrophy.
Right, like if you don't think about the bicep, it won't grow.
Right. They claim that feeling that internal psychological squeeze is somehow more critical than the external load you are lifting. But from a strict evidence-based perspective, mechanical tension and full motor unit recruitment reigns supreme.
Okay.
The weight itself does the work, provided you are lifting it through a full range of motion.
But wait, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
If I'm doing a bench press and I really concentrate on squeezing my chest muscles, I genuinely feel it burning more. I mean, there has to be a physiological reason for that, right? The gym bros aren't completely hallucinating that sensation.
No, they aren't hallucinating it, but context is everything. Consciously focusing on a target muscle can increase localized muscle activation. But what's fascinating here is that this phenomenon only really occurs in very specific scenarios, specifically isolated submaximal movements.
So, lighter weights.
Exactly. If you are lifting a very light weight, say 30% of your maximum capacity, and you think intensely about your bicep, EMG studies do show a slight spike in electrical activity in that muscle.
So there is a spike, but it's only when the weight isn't actually heavy enough to require your full effort.
That is the critical catch. That psychological focus should never come at the cost of progressive overload. Because if you are lifting a heavy weight, like a weight that truly challenges your physical capacity, your body just doesn't give you the luxury of choice. If you have 300 pounds on your back for a barbell squat, you don't have to close your eyes and whisper sweet nothings to your quadriceps to get them to fire.
Right, because if your quads don't fire autonomously, you're going to get violently crushed by the barbell. Survival kicks in.
Exactly. Moving a heavy load through a full, technically sound range of motion naturally forces maximum motor unit recruitment. And this brings in a biological concept known as the size principle, or Henneman's size principle.
Henneman's size principle, okay.
When you start lifting a weight, your central nervous system recruits small, slow-twitch muscle fibers first. But as the load gets heavier, or as you get closer to failure, your nervous system automatically recruits the larger, fast-twitch muscle fibers to generate the required force.
So it's kind of like flipping switches in a breaker box.
Oh, yes.
You start by turning on the small lights, But when you need massive power, the nervous system just slams every single breaker to the on position.
And it does that entirely without your conscious permission. It recruits all the available muscle fibers to generate the required mechanical tension, regardless of your internal psychological focus.
That's wild.
You cannot outthink a heavy barbell. The biological math just takes over. The tension is present, the motor units fire according to the size principle, the microdamage occurs, and the bridge gets reinforced.
I love that phrase. You can't outthink a heavy barbell.
It's true.
And honestly, that concept of people overcomplicating the physics of building muscle transitions perfectly into how we view burning fat.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if the weightlifting world is full of overcomplicated myths, the cardio world is basically a mythology textbook.
It really is.
We take the simple physics of fat loss and apply the exact same flawed overthinking to it.
The amount of bro science surrounding cardiovascular training and body fat reduction is just staggering. It is an industry built on promising shortcuts to a biological process that is strictly governed by thermodynamics.
And the undisputed king of cardio bro science has to be fasted cardio.
Oh, without a doubt.
This pervasive idea that you have to wake up at 5 a.m., aggressively avoid eating anything, and jump straight onto a treadmill or stair climber to melt away body fat.
It's everywhere.
Looking at the notes here on 24-hour metabolic accounting, I want to frame this with an analogy for you listening. Doing fasted cardio to burn more total fat seems a lot like me aggressively saving $1 on my morning coffee, feeling incredibly proud of my financial discipline, but then going out in the afternoon and spending an extra $1 on a pastry.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
Right. At the end of a 24-hour period, my net bank account balance remains exactly the same. I haven't actually saved any more money than if I just bought the coffee and skipped the pastry. Does the human body treat fat loss with that same level of strict accounting?
Yes. Your body is essentially a master accountant constantly balancing a metabolic checkbook over a 24-hour and even a weekly period. The myth of fasted cardio, this idea, promoted heavily in bodybuilding circles that exercising on an empty stomach is a superior method for accelerated fat burning, fundamentally misunderstands this accounting process. But to understand why the myth is so popular, we have to look at the sliver of truth that got twisted by the marketing.
Right, because these myths usually start with a misinterpretation of a real biological mechanism. So what is the sliver of truth here?
Well, the scientific reality is that performing cardio in a fasted state actually does temporarily increase what we call acute lipid oxidation.
Okay.
Because you haven't eaten overnight, your circulating insulin levels are very low and your glycogen stores, your stored carbohydrates, are somewhat depleted. In this state, lipolysis, which is the breakdown of fat, is uninhibited. Your body is practically forced to tap into fat stores for fuel during that specific workout.
So if someone is looking at a snapshot of just that 45-minute treadmill session, they are technically burning a higher percentage of fat right in that moment.
Exactly. And they see that data point and shout from the rooftops that fasted cardio is a miracle hack.
But they are ignoring the rest of the day.
They're ignoring the master accountant. The human body is highly adaptive and fiercely protective of homeostasis. If it burns a higher ratio of fat during your morning workout, the accounting system kicks in. It compensates by burning a much higher ratio of carbohydrates later in the day when you finally consume a meal. It actively preserves its remaining fat stores to balance out the morning's deficit.
So it balances the checkbook. The morning dollar saved is the afternoon dollar spent. It just shifts the substrate utilization around.
Exactly. Which is why the overwhelming consensus in the scientific literature shows that doing cardio fasted does not yield greater 24-hour net fat loss compared to fed cardio.
That's incredible.
Net fat loss is entirely dependent on your total daily energy expenditure, which we call TDE, and maintaining a net calorie deficit. It has absolutely nothing to do with the specific timing of your meals or whether your stomach was empty when you laced up your running shoes.
And it's not just that fasted cardio is mathematically pointless for extra fat loss. The notes emphasize that there are actual measurable downsides to forcing intense workouts completely fasted. Like, you aren't just breaking even. You might actually be doing damage.
There are significant biological downsides. If you are attempting intense weight training or, prolonged high-intensity interval cardio completely fasted, Your blood sugar is low, and your cortisol is naturally high from waking up.
That's miserable.
It feels highly uncomfortable. You might experience dizziness or nausea, but more importantly, it almost always leads to acute performance deficits.
Meaning you just don't have the physiological gas in the tank to push as hard.
Right, and if you can't push as hard, you aren't creating the necessary mechanical tension we just spent the first half of this deep dive talking about.
Oh, wow. Full circle.
You are compromising the engine of muscle growth just to chase a fat loss myth. Furthermore, in severe cases of glycogen depletion, training fasted can lead to involuntary muscle protein degradation.
Wait, muscle protein degradation? You mean the body will actually eat its own muscle tissue?
Yep, through a process called gluconeogenesis.
Gluconeogenesis.
If the body desperately needs glucose for high-intensity output and your glycogen stores are empty, it will literally strip amino acids from your hard-earned muscle tissue and convert them into glucose in the liver to fuel the workout.
That is insane.
You are literally breaking down the tissue you are trying to build just to find the energy to finish the session.
So you're suffering through a miserable, dizzying workout at 5:00 a.m., failing to hit the necessary mechanical tension for growth, and potentially sacrificing muscle mass, all for a fat loss benefit that literally does not exist by the time your head hits the pillow at night.
It's rough.
That is the harsh empirical reality of the empty stomach myth.
It is a phenomenal waste of human effort.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. You just mentioned total daily energy expenditure, TDEE, is the ultimate king of fat loss.
It is.
If meal timing doesn't matter, and a calorie deficit is what drives the ship, the logical next question is, well, how do we actually maximize our TDEE without having to live on a treadmill?
Good question.
Because I was looking at the breakdown of TDEE in the notes, and it divides into EAT and NEAT.
Yes.
EAT is obviously exercise activity thermogenesis, the actual hour I'm sweating in the gym. But NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, seems to be where the actual magic happens. And I'll make a confession right now. I am incredibly guilty of being the classic sedentary gym goer.
Oh, man. It is an incredibly common trap, and it perfectly illustrates why understanding the balance between eat and neat is perhaps the most crucial concept for sustainable body recomposition.
The trap is so easy to fall into. Like, I will go to the gym and I will absolutely crush a brutal 1-hour weightlifting session. I'm sweating. My mechanical tension was high. I'm proud of myself.
It'll feel great.
Yeah. I drive home, take a shower,
Yeah.
and then I basically melt into my office chair or my couch for the next 10 hours.
Yep, there it is.
I work on my laptop. I watch a movie. I literally do not move a single muscle until I go to bed. Subconsciously, I feel like I've earned the right to be a complete puddle because I suffered in the gym for 60 minutes.
And by doing that, you are effectively neutralizing the calorie-burning benefits of that workout.
Ouch.
Let's break down the math of those two components. Eat, your structured, intentional fitness session, actually makes up a surprisingly small percentage of your total daily energy expenditure. For most people, an hour of lifting weights might only burn 300 to 400 calories.
Which is practically nothing in the grand scheme of a 24-hour day. It's like, what, 2 handfuls of almonds?
Exactly. Now, NEAT, on the other hand, is the unintentional, spontaneous movement you do throughout the day.
Okay.
It's your posture, walking to your car, pacing while on a phone call, fidgeting at your desk, doing the dishes, taking the stairs, shivering when you're cold. It is all the low-level physical activity that isn't formal exercise.
So my strategy of crushing EAT for 1 hour and letting my NEAT drop to absolute zero for the remaining 23 hours is severely bottlenecking my fat loss.
It is a massive bottleneck. A frequent error among fitness enthusiasts is relying exclusively on EAT while severely neglecting NEAT.
Oh.
If you do a brutal workout, your body experiences fatigue. Subconsciously, your brain tells you to conserve energy for the rest of the day to protect your fuel reserves.
That makes sense.
You stop fidgeting. You slump in your chair instead of sitting upright. You ask someone else to grab you a glass of water instead of walking to the kitchen. You take the elevator instead of the stairs. Your body just turns down the dial on your spontaneous movement.
It's that homeostatic protective mechanism again.
Mhm.
The body is trying to balance the ledger by making me lazy.
Yes. And the result is that your total daily energy output ends up surprisingly low despite that intense hour at the gym. A sedentary office worker who exercises for 1 hour a day might actually burn fewer total calories than a construction worker or a nurse who never sets foot in a gym but is constantly on their feet, moving and accumulating NEAT for 8 hours straight.
Because that continuous low-level energy expenditure just compounds over hours and hours.
Exactly.
We constantly think of the gym as the only place where the calorie burning happens. But the mundane stuff, just walking the dog, doing yard work, keeping a clean house, is actually the hidden foundational engine for fat loss.
True body recomposition requires managing both systems effectively. You need to state the heavy lifting for the progressive mechanical overload to build the muscle tissue, but you must utilize general daily activity, standing, and daily steps as the stable baseline of fat loss locomotion.
Right.
NEAT is your metabolic foundation. Doing the dishes is literally a biological fat loss tool.
Okay, let's bring this all together. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The takeaways from this module are incredibly empowering because they simplify everything.
They really do.
First, you don't need to buy a magical, complicated routine. You just need to apply progressive mechanical overload to consistently challenge your muscles. Second, you can stop meditating with dumbbells.
Please stop.
You don't have to aggressively feel the squeeze, just lift heavy weights with good form, and your nervous system's size principle will do the rest. Third, you can absolutely eat a banana before you run because fasted cardio doesn't trick your body's 24-hour accounting system, and training fed will actually protect your hard-earned muscle.
Huge point.
And finally, the most impactful thing you can do for fat loss isn't living in the gym, it's just staying generally active and keeping your NEAT high throughout your normal day. It is science making our lives simpler, not harder.
It really is a return to fundamental human biology. We just have to get out of our own way. And honestly, looking at all of this through an evolutionary lens raises a pretty important question, something I'd love for you to chew on after we wrap up today.
I'll lay it on us.
We've established that our bodies evolved to require constant, progressive, mechanical tension just to maintain muscle, and spontaneous, constant daily movement that NEAT just to maintain a healthy baseline fat composition.
Right.
So if we look at the bigger picture, how much of our modern, ultra-convenient, technology-driven lifestyle, the grocery delivery apps, the remote desk work, the electric scooters, the algorithmic feeds, keeping us glued to our couches, is secretly sabotaging our foundational biology before we even step foot inside a gym?
Wow. Our modern convenience is actually our biggest physiological obstacle. I love that. Thank you all so much for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning the fads, keep pushing those heavy weights, and maybe, just maybe, take the stairs instead of the elevator today. We'll catch you next time.